Mirrors and Dreams, Book 2 of the Unseen Scar series, written and narrated by C.R. Saxon. Chapter 14. A little hand waved, drawing Ferdinand's attention to his pupil. Red coated him. Have I been dozing? Covering a yawn, the skeleton looked away. I apologize, that was rude. Worry painted Elby's smile. Only you could make a child look like that. Blue crystals fell upon his own project. We discussed the programmable flying disc, the energy conversion cuffs, and pet robot. Would you like to see this block's final project? Mismatched eyes doubled at the unusual offer. I'd love that, are you sure? Rubbing his eyes, Ferdinan smiled. If it'll help you, I'm happy to share. His mentor's finger directed Elby to a well-polished steel toroid, about the size of a small melon. It had 2 sets of double holes on opposite sides and a black plug between. No buttons or screens. It looked like an odd paperweight. What is it? My heart. Ferdinan picked it up. It wasn't as heavy as it looked, but it still had some heft. My old design wasn't as good. They're needing replacing, so I made something better. Heart? Elby asked once Ferdinan stopped yawning. Sorry, engineer jargon. Heart is the power source. My first design was sufficient, but inefficient, and not as durable as I'd hoped, but I've learned a good bit since then. How does it work? Small-scale fusion. Offering the toroidal to his pupil, Ferdinan rubbed his eyes, and then his face. Wake up. It took longer and longer each day to find any kind of energy. A couple more weeks and I'll be used to it. Small-scale fusion? Mismatched eyes marveled at the still donut in his hands. No need to argue a purpose for this. I'm sorry, that'd make it less useful for you. You're supposed to teach him to think when you can't. I know how fusion reactor plants work, but how did you make it so small? After your 9th-year courses, you'll understand enough for my explanation to make sense. I'll pick something more useful. I apologize. I'm so stupid. You're incompetent. No, it's awesome. Elby stepped back to hide his concern. I wish I already learned enough to ask you about it. The room tilted, forcing Ferdinan to sit, doubling the weight of his eyelids. It took a minute to get his mind moving, but he remembered a device Elby would love. With great effort, he got to his feet, then to his closet and back. Shaking his head, the skeleton laid a small rod before his apprentice. Elby picked up the strange piece. What is it? That's the... After a long yawn, Ferdinan finished. OP-71-2. It's used to open screens. Elby marveled over it, making Ferdinan blush. Distract him with something shiny. You can't do better than this. Shut up. I know I'm incompetent. Discordant laughter echoed around his skull. It wouldn't stop, no matter how much he demanded, no matter how much he pleaded, no matter how much of that chemical he took. Gritty sand crawled under his skin, making Ferdinan realize he was covering his ears, panting. Master Ferdinan! Wild, mismatched eyes looked over the skeleton as the boy repeated his name. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? The voice answered happily, but he couldn't keep engaging it, not around others, especially not around someone as young as Elby. Shaking his head didn't banish the sleep from his eyes or the voice from his mind, but it threatened to knock him out. Even his words felt slurred. I apologize. What were you asking? Elby frowned, but answered, Does anyone know about these? 'Cause I'd use it. No, no one uses them. Elby reached for his bag and pulled out an old screen, laying it on the table. He took the rod, which looked like it might have been a screwdriver at one point in its life, to the back. Stop! You'll lose everything on it. Ferdinan jolted forward, stopping an inch from Elby's hand. Bright red, he eased back. Oh, okay. Deactivating the tool, Elby returned to studying it, though he glanced at the blushing skeleton in concern. Chewing on his lip, Ferdinan hurried out of the room before Elby could say anything. When he returned, he had a small stack of old screens. These are all... He yawned. Dead. Really? Are you sure? Elby hesitated, looking between the tool and his bag. He wants to leave. Why am I like this? Yeah, the school gives me the dead screens to see if I can salvage any. Awe filled Elby's eyes. You can do anything, can't you? Stupid child. Why did he say that? I'm useless. I can't do anything. Even the medicine isn't working. No, there's far more I can't do than can. I just wanted to learn how those work. But the company's tight-lipped. It took a year to rig something to open them. I broke the first one beyond salvation, but saw how they sealed them. From there I figured out how to open them. How did this get approved? The school always shipped those back to the company, right? I argued scientific curiosity, and if I learned how they worked, the school could fix them, instead of getting more. How many have you fixed? A few dozen. To be fair, Ferdinan yawned, his entire body shaking. Is this medicine actually a sedative? And the fatigue was increasing each day, but the voice wasn't going away. There was a backlog when I proposed the OP-72-1. Now, I just fix them as I get them. Turning it back on, Elby attacked the edge of the screen. Is this how I hold it? About 2 inches from the edge. They put the release in pretty deep. Following instructions, Elby was rewarded with a small pop. Okay, now what? Slide the back in the direction of the arrow. Oh? The young boy forced a smile, but it didn't extend beyond his lips. I thought that was their logo. Rubbing his eyes, Ferdinand gave Elby a grin. Yeah, they were smart. Twofold purpose. If only you could be so useful. Elby was surprised to see the screen was 2 sheets. It really looked solid, and once the back was removed, it was no longer clear like glass. A million questions left the child about the inner workings of the device, but even if his apprentice knew enough physics, Ferdinand drifted off before he could explain anything. The Duchess glared at the one groveling before her as she tapped a small wrapped nutrition bar against the desk. Why are these numbers so high? The southern plantains are failing. The population's migrating to the capital, thinking they'll be fed. And they were, till so many arrived and food supplements were delayed. Tornadoes are beyond anyone's control. Sharp eyes studied the little bar. Natural disasters were no one's fault, but they were the responsibility of her station, and they tested how well lesser nobles did their job. Those plantations only started failing. They should still have more food there than here in the north. According to hearsay, Duke Orthan squandered it on parties, but if the rumors are true, a number of lower dukes and lords are doing similar things, pretending they have a surplus to avoid scrutiny. Grabbing a screen, paper, and pen from her desk, she pulled up the records of their various holdings. Taking from emergency rations was never preferable, even in situations they were designed for, but that's why they had them. Starting with the ones needing wares rotated soonest, she wrote down all the pertinent information and handed it to the man. Start with these. Hopefully the supply chain will be repaired before they run dry. Swallowing hard, the man took the paper and looked over the information. It was odd having it written instead of on a screen, but he knew better than to question her. Yes, ma'am. Fools. Doing nothing is worse than mass hysteria at this point. Again, she tapped the bar against her desk, considering her options. How much land is abandoned? A bit. I'll get you exact numbers. Good. We'll be tightening our belts again. Piercing eyes turned to the man. Arrange for me to visit Duke Orthan and any other pertinent areas. Amelika will serve in my absence. And your youngest? Normally she kept her children with her until they started official studies. Trani still had another year. But this wasn't the kind of business she'd take a young child to. Unfortunately, Kanani can care for her for a few weeks. Yes, ma'am. When would you like to leave? As soon as possible. Chimes sounded from somewhere. Bells. Birds took center stage in his mind. A groan left thin lips. Bony fingers forced open blurry eyes. Everything ached. Why am I cold? Ugh. His left hip, shoulder, and both knees felt like they'd been hit with something hard. Giggles in a perfect void enveloped him. You'll turn into an old man like that. Old man? Crystal blue eyes latched onto bare golden brown feet. Why won't she wear shoes? John's on his way. He's been ordered to drag you to class. That emptiness attacked his cheek, scrunching his face. Tired. Useless. Let's get your blood moving. That'll wake you up. Giggles filled reality, and the void swallowed him up again. Was he moving? Maybe a cold shower. A barely functional brain grasped onto that suggestion. Yeah. Oya steadied him, guiding him into the bathroom. Don't slip, or I won't care how modest you are. It took too much energy to blush. First stop was the sink to splash cold water on his face. What is this? It felt too extreme for a side effect. More likely healing, projects, teaching, and shadowing his cousin pushed him past his limit. The fierce schedule. I need to write up a report. Moving helped. Between this and the cold shower, his eyes opened, but his feet were unsteady. Stripping down, Ferdinan took a cold shower. Whether it woke him up or just gave him incentive to move faster was up for debate. Either way, he finished and dressed by the time John arrived with food. Are you okay? Ferdinan wobbled out of the closet and latched onto the nearest table. I'm having trouble waking up. It's your own fault. Food should help. Of course you'd say that. John set a plate next to his ally before sitting down to his own. A third plate disappeared when Oya walked out of the lab. You have to attend class today. I'm shadowing my cousin. Ferdinan blinked at the waffle piled high with fruit, not sure what to do with it. Zephyr's sick. You're coming to class. John frowned when Ferdinan turned transparent. I don't know why they're letting you off so easy. Even you have to be falling behind after missing this much. I'm not, Ferdinan mumbled. The Duchess is keeping Master Deo away, isn't she? Besides, Ferdinan already finished his coursework. Everything was submitted. Class was unnecessary. Show John how superior you think you are. Ferdinan? A yawn took over, right alongside a full-body stretch. What did Oya do to you? Blinking fast, Ferdinan latched onto a moment of alertness. I asked her to take care of a couple of mills for a few days, and you can't keep your eyes open. You've been stabbing the same piece of fruit for 5 minutes now. Looking down, dozens of puncture wounds perforated the poor piece of mango. Don't bother stalling. If you don't finish before it's time to leave, I'm dragging you out anyway. I should check. My prince. Healer Gerard's looking after him. He's fine. The mere mention of the healer sent Ferdinand's heart into overdrive, waking him up briefly. If you aren't going to eat. John stood and slapped his hands against the table. We'll leave now, so Master Ludovic can tell you what you've missed. Where are those bars of yours? You can eat one of them on the way. Ferdinand glared at his ally until his eyes drifted to the floor. Stinging needles encased his shoulder. What? John stood back, hands on his hip. We're talking about this now. What? Ferdinand looked around. A long wooden box caught his attention, twisting his stomach. I forgot about that. What? Pure frustration watched Ferdinand struggle across the room. Nails laid scattered. Hammer. What did I do with it? Not seeing it on the table, he searched below, only to fall over. Despair tore Ferdinand's heart. She lost her arm because of me. Shifting, he scooted under the table, pressing himself against the wall. Ferdinand curled up in the shadows, hoping his ally would leave, hoping he'd die with the next breath. You failed her. You deprived her life of most opportunities. You crippled her. She'll live a long, painful, fruitless life because of you. An ocean surged behind blue crystals. How could I forget? I'm horrible. You're the worst. I'm the worst. Ferdinand? John hunched down and offered a hand. Come out. Tell me what's going on. It doesn't matter. Obviously it does. Frowning, John tried again. What did you forget? Why hasn't Yamo called, asking about it? Ferdinand? That box should have gone out weeks ago. You stole her arm. John inspected the box. Bent nails did nothing to hold the askew lid in place. Inside were 2 oddly shaped metal poles and a small electrode. He's not forgetful, but dust attested to how long it sat there. Where's the hammer? Ferdinand's work was precise and meticulous, not being able to hammer a lid shut. Looking up, John wished for his family more than ever. Near the ceiling was a blemish he'd missed, with a handle sticking out. What happened? Might as well send this off. Rummaging for another hammer, John sealed the addressed box. Now how do I get him out of here? Squatting down. He's asleep again? Neither would the gent stir when shaken. Another sigh and John stood and checked the supply boat's schedule. It leaves in the morning. The next didn't come for another 2 weeks. I should send this for him. What the contents were or who it was for didn't matter. Most of his allies' work was time-sensitive. Besides, this felt like the only thing in his life right now John had any control over. Oya. John stepped out of the lab and looked over at the water. If you're nearby, please watch him.